Nietzsche thought that we did not pay much attention to the origin of our moral values, and he wanted us to develop a more critical examination of these values. But first, it is crucial to understand the difference between the last man, the slave, and the higher man in order to understand our values that we have held for the last 2,000 years. The last man and the slave are composed of the herd, or the common people. The last man is the typical mediocre man, the man who is afraid to venture out into the night, to craft himself into something meaningful, to have goals, to have a lifelong purpose. The last man has given up on life. He is tired of life, has no motivation, takes no risks, and yearns for comfort and security. Moreover, within the last man, there is nothing new and healthy. No ambition, creativity, flourishing of new ideas. All potential for greatness is suppressed and everything is colorless. There is no passion or ideal to strive for. On the other hand, there is the slave, who carries a more pernicious type of sickness within him. The slave is weak, lacks power, hates himself, and is guilty about his very own existence. The slave is also full of what Nietzsche called resentment, or ressentiment, which is the French word. The slave hates his life, and this resentment brings about envy towards all those higher than him. There is a strong pathos of distance between the lower man and the higher man. Pathos meaning feeling or emotion. Nietzsche used this phrase a lot throughout his works. So instead of trying to become or transcend the higher man, the slave wants the higher man to suffer just like he does, and therefore devises a plan to render the higher man into slaves as well. They bring down the higher man to mediocrity. They develop slave morality. The morality of unselfing is the morality of decline par excellence. The fact I am perishing, translated into the imperative, you all shall perish. This sole morality, which has hitherto been taught, it denies the very foundation of life. The higher man, in contrast, consists of those who are courageous, creative, risky, devoid of regret, intense, robust, independent, life-loving, life-affirming free spirits. Nietzsche considers the higher man to be exemplifying master morality. So unlike the slave, the higher man has no reason to have resentment within him, or envious feelings, for there is no one to project these feelings upon. The powerful, as Nietzsche points out expressly, have no need to prove their might either to themselves or to others by oppressing or hurting others. If they do hurt others, they do so incidentally, in the process of using their power creatively. They hurt others without thinking of it. Only the weak man wishes to hurt and see signs of suffering. The higher man does not concern himself with the mediocrity of the herd. He crafts his own power, his own self-mastery. The concept of greatness entails being noble, wanting to be by oneself, being able to be different, standing alone and having to live independently. For the last 2,000 years, the governing morality, that is, Christian morality, has been the sole foundation for our moral values. According to Nietzsche, this morality inverts life. It goes against nature and instinct. He calls this morality anti-nature. Could mankind itself be in decadence? Has it always been? What is certain is that it has been taught only decadence values as supreme values. Nietzsche felt in some ways that these values were unhealthy, and intended not only to render our potential for greatness, but render us into something smaller, sicker, into a herd animal. How did this morality come about? In Nietzsche's book, On the Genealogy of Morality, Nietzsche sets out to answer how we came about our present values. Nietzsche postulates that there was a slave revolt. Due to the slave's bottled up resentment, this created envy within the slave, and the slave took vengeance upon the higher man. The slaves desired to hurt the higher man, but were not able to, so they created a new set of values. Weakness, fairness, equality, and humbleness became good. In contrast, the strong, powerful, courageous, independent, creative, higher man became evil. Historically, Nietzsche believed that the original morality took place between the values of good and bad, not evil. Evil is a very Christian concept, and Nietzsche believes the term never really existed before the Christians. The slave sets out to tear down all of those who have unique power and differentness. A common war on all that is rare, strange, privileged, the higher man, the higher soul, the higher duty, the higher responsibility, the abundance of creative power and masterfulness. Overcoming slave morality is a tremendously daunting task, for the herd rules by the masses. But Nietzsche urges us to break our values and create our own. He who wants to become a creator in good and evil has first to be a destroyer and break values. Thus, the greatest evil belongs with the greatest good. This, however, is the creative good. The crucial notion of herd morality lies in understanding the psychology of the lower man. That is, the lower man, or the slave, seeks vengeance and destruction upon everything greater than him, due to his own failures, inner guilt, lack of creativity, and his inability to flourish. So slave morality is reactive morality. This volte-face of the valuing standpoint, this inevitable gravitation to the objective instead of back to the subjective, is typical of resentment. It requires objective stimuli to be capable of action at all. Its action is fundamentally a reaction. The slave defines himself solely based upon the higher man, who he sees as evil, whereas the higher man feels no need to define himself. For the higher man does not define himself in reaction to someone else. He is simply aware of his creativity and differentness. Resentment and envy do not reside within him. The contrary is the case when we come to the aristocrat system of values. It acts and grows spontaneously. It merely seeks its antithesis in order to pronounce a more grateful and exultant yes to its own self. Ultimately, herd morality continues to flourish, and Nietzsche was insightful enough to foresee this continuation indefinitely. Herd morality preaches for what it lacks. The lower man cleverly and secretly spreads the poison of revenge. The lower man wants the higher man to suffer just as he does. You preachers of equality, thus from you the tyrant madness of impotence cries for equality. Thus your most secret tyrant appetite disguised itself in words of virtue.